Welcome to Memes. It's about my book, the Book of Meme Law, but every time I talk to anybody, they always say, well, what's a meme? Younger people think that a meme is nothing more than a little computer thing where they talk amongst themselves and put pictures up. And that is kind of a fledgling meme, but it's not really. Richard Dawkins, when he put the name together years and years ago, when he was an up-and-coming sociologist, he gave the definition of a meme in the book Lucifer Principle, written by Howard Bloom. And there's a lot of us that have followed memes and experimented with it after that, even though Richard Dawkins has basically abandoned the practice of it. Here's Dawkins' original definition of a meme. It's a self-replicating cluster of ideas thanks to a handful of biological tricks. I'll tell you about that in a minute. These visions become the glue that hold together civilization. Everything from your family to your nation. Any social organism. Giving each culture its distinctive shape, making some intolerant and dissent and the others to be open and diverse. They, that is to say the memes, are the tools with which we unlock the forces of nature. It's the only way we can work to build hospitals, make mines, dig whatever. But it's also the things that makes wars. Our visions sometimes are dreams of peace, but sometimes it turns us into killers. Now, memes were first mentioned, as far as I know, by Paul. Way back 2,000 years ago, he didn't use the term memes. It wasn't around there. It was a Greek word that wasn't being used. He used the words principalities and powers. And a lot of times people explain these principalities and powers as the enemy of the Christian church being the enemies of Israel. Not so. Paul was writing during the midst of what's called Pax Romana. There were really no armies except Rome. There was no wars amongst the countries. So the powers and principalities that Paul was talking about, these mysterious things which were coming against the teachings of Jesus, were really memes. Groups of people that were religions, different ideas that were against what Jesus had taught. Even the rich and powerful who didn't want to share their goods with the poor. So that's the original use of memes that we've ever come across. Now let's talk about the biological tricks that I just talked about. You'll see this in the Book of Meme Law. The diagram's on your screen right now. This is the way we humans develop ourselves. From the time we're tiny little infants, our brains cluster stuff together. In the diagram it talks about clustering the first things that you have to do. Going to the potty, shoe tying, stair climbing, just basic skills. If you had to memorize them right flash dab, each one of them placed somewhere in your brain, you would go crazy. But you don't. What you do is you cluster them together, and very soon, at age 4 or 5, they become family extensions. They become you in a family. So all that for breakfast, the wake up time, it gets into a small meme, and that small meme is called waking up. Then there's dinner time. Then there's school. And in each one you have a different group of skills, different actions that you just automatically take. If you had to think about all that, you would go mad. You could never learn anything. And it keeps on going up to when you form your countries, when you form your families, your political units, your companies, and they become a meme, each one unto themselves, with a completely different set of rules. So that's where it all came from. Walter Rauschenbusch, back almost 100 years ago now, wrote in his in one of his books, he's a Christian, I guess you would call him philosopher, that he had noticed that societies and organizations And nations have their own kind of corporate unity. That when people come together, they are no longer individual people, but they act as one. And he then noticed the fact that there are memes without ever hearing the names. That leads, by the way, to the fact that there's two of each of us. One is the individual Brit. One is the Brit who's a part of the Army, or who is an employee of the post office, or who is a member of the Minshall family. And we fit into those different places a different way each time, and according to where you're at in the meme. Let me give you some things that you might recognize that are memes at work, that is to say, the two of us kind of thing. A young man from a good family grew up attending a small town rural church. He had been called the peace-loving good son. A member of the choir, wouldn't hurt anyone under any circumstances. Yet, with no local jobs, he joined the armed forces, and 54 weeks later, he had deliberately killed an 8-year-old child, an unarmed old man, and his 2 grandparents and their infant sons. So he went into a house in Al-Fallujah, Iraq, and he acted as a soldier. The boy that was the choir boy no longer lived. He was a soldier. By the way, he's been plagued by the memories of that ever since. How could this happen, we say? Between 2000 and 2009, sales and profits shrank $30 million a quarter, and the stock was lost over 90% of its value, and that was Home Depot. During that slide, the board of this major retailer increased the CEO's compensation by $245 million. Business experts asked, why? It's meme law at work. A radio panel discussion, including America's renowned Diane Rehm, experts cover events, and at the end of the time, the panels always get together and says, why did they do that? Because they're part of a separate meme. Final one is listed in the book. The moderator, Heather Conley, is director and senior fellow at CSIS, where I'm a member. It's the Center for Strategic and International Studies, big-time think tank. She is a brilliant, well-educated, experienced, mature person on international affairs. At the end of an address where she's taking a famous U.S. politician and expert on international affairs, she asked him, how come organizations and movements disappear? I mean, they're gone, like the Confederacy. I mean, really gone, for decades, maybe even a century, and then mysteriously they reappear and come back to life. How come? The expert, Brzezinski, by the way, is who it was, he's dead now, said, I haven't the slightest idea, but I've often wondered the same thing. The reason is because minds have clustered together, created a meme, and even if the meme is wiped out, that is to say all those people are gone, the meme becomes a phantom. It just stays there, and it just waits to be reinvigorated. Now, the thing is, let me see if I can find this page here for us. You'll notice now there's a diagram on the screen, and it talks about 2 individuals getting together. That's not a meme. The second diagram shows you people that are gathered. That is to say, they can be at a party, a football game. They could be on the computer, but they're just talking small talk, how's the weather, whatever, where there's no purpose. That's not a meme. Then there's what they call a phantom or informal meme, where some of those people, sometimes off in the corner or on the internet at a certain site, will start saying, you know, the children in Ethiopia need to have more food. And I think we could do something about it. Yes. And they all agree to join together, and they form a formal meme. That is to say, they get an officer, they take a mission statement, They build a corporate identity, they collect money, and they disperse money to the children of Ethiopia. See, that's when a formal meme is actually made. You'll notice there's also a diagram at the end of that section which shows which is on the screen now, the structure of a meme unto itself. Now, let me preamble this by saying something. I've got this little model for when I do presentations. Let's say this is a meme. It could be your family, and it could be the United States. It doesn't matter. It's an organization of human minds. Well, let me say there are no little gray balls floating around in the sky. It just doesn't happen. But this is a way to illustrate it is. It has an outside cover, and if you were to cut it in half and be able to do that, you would find the center of the meme, just like on the diagram, are the place, what I call the arena of ideas and beliefs. Remember, there's nothing there because a meme is a cluster of ideas and beliefs. Every single meme has patriarchs and matriarchs that run the center of it, and they land up being the clergy, this is in a larger one, the clergy, the politicians, and the military. They're the ones that control any country in the world, any large unit. In a family, that could be the mother, the patriarchal father, and older sister. Somebody enforces the laws of the family, and that would be the same as the military. You see, now those what do they call, concentric, I think, circles go out from there, and that's the degree of involvement that people have in their meme. The next group out are the power elites. They're the ones that are behind the scene. They, generally speaking, aren't noticed as people who control. People like the Koch brothers, for instance, and they've got big money and big power, and they're David Soros on the other side, and they're funding and calling the politicians and say, here's what we want to happen, and the politicians do it. So they're the most powerful people in society, but a very small group of people. Again, in your family meme, that might be a brother-in-law who doesn't really show up for family things, but everybody's proud of him. He's the only PhD in the whole family, and he's got the money. So when he wants something done, he calls the enforcer older sister and say, see if you can't get mom and pop to disown Georgie, because Georgie's no good. Pretty soon Georgie's disowned, that's all. And that's the way it works. Then you got the enablers, the cadre, the next group out, a little larger. These are the people that work for the center of the meme. They're the civil servants, they're the police officers, etc. And they keep the meme working. They enforce the rules and regs, collect the taxes, pay out the money. They keep the meme working. The next group out is the biggest of all. It's the worker doers. Most people watching this movie today are worker doers. And we are actually 90% of the population, even though in the diagram it just looks the same. It's not. It's huge. That should be this big, if you will. And we are the ones that just do it. We're told to go to the steel mill and work. We're told how much to do. I have a son who works in the post office, and they are working the people in the post office to death, giving them 3 times the mail they've ever had to deliver, and not hiring anybody to help, because they want to drive down the cost of postage for the people who own the country. So the people who own Amazon or whatever, they're getting a free ride on the post office, where everybody else pays by not getting any mail, or having a poor mail person come along at 8 o'clock at night after she's worked for 10 hours delivering her mail. We're the workers and doers. Oh, and by the way, we're also the ones, when the meme decides to go to war, which is a favorite occupation of national memes, they call up and say, give us your sons and your daughters. And we say, okay, go. And they're gone. Maybe for good. The next group out are the marginals, the young, the refugees. They're technically in the skin of the meme, but they don't have any power. Most of them can't even vote. Finally, there's the outsiders and the unknowns. And that's what makes up the core of a meme. So you see, they're all the same. Again, as I say, a family, a business, it doesn't matter. There's always somebody in charge and somebody who carries out the work. You see also on the screen a diagram which talks about how memes can change. The biggest one in the United States, the easiest way to describe it, and this is not being political at all, is when the Confederacy died, what is then the Democratic Party kind of took over the South because the Republicans had led the Yankees to get rid of slavery. So everybody in the South that was elected for years, decades, was Democrat. So they were the party of the right in the South. Now what happened was, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, it was predicted by Johnson, President Johnson, that the Democrats were going to lose the South for 30 or 40 years and it was going to become Republican. He knew meme law, and they did. So they shifted over, and the Democratic Party in the South became the enemy of the Southern establishment, where the Republican Party all of a sudden became the champion. So you see, memes can change colors. They can change sizes. A country can be out there and they can be lined up with Russia, let's say. But then all of a sudden the war starts to go the other way, or some other country has more money, and all of a sudden that country gets aligned with an enemy of Russia, and they just change over. It's the way memes work. Now, you've got all that down. What is meme law? Well, meme law are 55 rules. They are 55. I have been experimenting with memes for 20 years, both on the street, because I was a pastor, I was a cop, and I've been a chaplain, so I've dealt with people all over the place. Memes all act the same way, as I've said before, and it's meme law that controls that. Nobody knows that they're doing it that way. It's just that everybody who runs a meme, a country, a company, is sold out to the meme. So they act by the 55 rules one way. If you're sitting all the way in the pews in the back and you're not really a part of anything, then it doesn't affect you that much because you're not making decisions for the meme. So the thing is, the 55 rules are there. They're in the back of the book. You can read them yourself. One of the ones is meme law number 5. I'll give you one example. Individual persons have default settings of communion. You see, when two people meet each other, like on the bridge or on the street corner, they immediately say, hello, how are you? Where do you live? I live over here. Oh, doesn't your sister live close to me? They have a default setting automatically trying to work a commune. But when two like kinds of memes, like the Bloods and the Crips, the Russians and the Americans, you see, when they meet, they have a combat default setting. They automatically, without even thinking about it, go to war. So that's the way it works. The 55 rules are the things that govern your entire life and mine. And when you know them, many rulers know them well, and they use them against us. They line us up and get us ready to go to war for them, for instance. It's the biggest activity. So we lay down our children's lives, their legs, their limbs, their eyes, whatever, and we don't even know why we do it. We do it because we're part of a meme. Once we step out of that meme, let's say retire, become older, go into a nursing home, whatever, you're not part of society anymore, you look back and you say, oh my God, what have I done? You see, oh my God, what have I done? And it's because you didn't understand meme law. The idea of the Renaissance Institute printing this book is to help people recognize when their chain is being yanked. So the people on talk shows won't have a panel, and in the end they won't have to say, why did they do such a stupid thing? They'll be able to say, I saw this coming and I tried to stop it. And that's the point. You slow it down and you look at something and you answer Charles Gherkin's world famous question from his big time famous book, Crisis Counseling, back in the 1960s and 70s. You always ask the question, what's really going on here? And if you ask that question, most of the time, if let's say you're a police officer, you will not arrest the obvious candidate for the charge. You will look deeper and find out somebody else did it. We're just finding out that today. The book is available at memelaw.com, 1-844-MEME-LAW. It's also available on Amazon and at your local booksellers. You might have to order it in. That's okay. It's $14.95. It's $5, I think, as an ebook. Please read it. If you don't like it, if you think it's nonsense, just simply return it and you'll get your money back. I just ask everybody in this country to please try to read the book. It's easy. It's written in lay language, nothing spectacular, nothing booky, doctory, nothing. It's just written for real people to understand. And once you know this, you'll watch the 6 o'clock news in an entire different way. And it'll be amazing, even when your friends say to you, how do you know all this? How did you predict that? You'll be able to know in the future what's going to happen in many cases because you'll understand meme law. And you'll see if this group does this and this group does this, then something's going to happen. Memes are, as Dawkins said, the very core of civilization. And if we don't get this right, and we're not getting it right now, we are going to land up putting ourselves in caves because we didn't know how to take care of ourselves. Call it powers and principalities, original sin, call it anything you want. This is how it works, and you can know how it works. No religion, just plain common sense. God bless you, and thanks for coming.